Hello, I am that Rob Human, and welcome to part 6 of the Tabletop Playground development series. In this episode, we're going to touch on the board object, the container object, and the card holder object. Primarily, this is going to be about the chest. I'm going to touch on the board and the card holder, but they're fairly lightweight, so we can dive into that. Before we do, however, I'm going to make a slight addendum to the last video, because I talked to Plasticity, of course, the developers of Tabletop Playground, and they clarified something about the image shape model for me. So I'm just going to create a dummy one real quick. I'm not going to save it. I'm just going to, just go ahead and create one real quick. And that behavior that I was confused on is regarding the tinting. You see, the edges are always going to be tinted. The only reason why the face isn't is because when I created the object, I had that one checkbox checked, and so it pulls in this default black map for the mask. This is basically just say don't tint the front. So the mask map actually is in charge of controlling the behavior of the face and has no bearing on the edge. So the edge will always be tinted based on the primary color, or if you use the default objects, you can control it here instead, of course. But the mask map affects the face. So if you want nothing tinted by the primary color on the front, set that red channel to black. Or if you want some segment that is controlled by the secondary color, set that area to blue in the mask map, and so on and so forth. But that's the behavior I was slightly hung up on. I thought there was something special about the black map that allowed the edge to be tinted, and that's not the case. It's the edge will always be tinted if you're using the shape model mode. And of course, this applies to the generic model as well. If you have the generic model with this shape option selected. So just quick addendum on that. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and create a board object, and I'm going to just use a dummy texture here because, and here's really the primary option that you might need to toggle before you create it, whether or not you want to include a frame. You can delete it once you've created the object if you don't want it, but you can't add it post facto, so you might want to include the frame and then make a choice on that later. But you'll see that the game board object is just another variant of generic. So all the same rules in generic objects apply, and you can create a game board from the generic object. The only difference that this works on is, or the only difference that this makes is that the ground type is, or the object type is ground by default. So that's kind of the differentiation that they make. So again, like the image map model is, or the image shape model rather, it is a preset. It's a generic object with a couple switches flipped to start you off. But yeah, like this is the board surface model, right? And there's the texture that we selected. You can change that if you want and whatnot. And that'll be your game board. And then if we actually swap over to the other object, that is the board, the wooden border. And it has these preset default textures. From what I can tell, you can't actually access these if you unselect them. So, take that a bit cautiously. Only delete them if you're sure you want them deleted. And then this is what it would look like without that checkbox in the beginning checked. It would just be the board. So that's pretty much the board object. It's the same as a generic object with a couple initial switches flipped. Getting onto the fun stuff, let's play with the container. And I've pulled in a model that I've used for the Twilight Imperium mod that I made for that, and I have it here. It's my crate model, so I'm just going to select that and create that. And of course it has no texture applied, so let's, apply a texture. C for color. And doesn't look all that exciting, but that's okay. We'll change this to crate X. I used to use the _X for extra until I started using M for material. Semantics. Anyways, so you can see that, you get this white outer edge, and the way this mask is set up, I can color these independently, and I did that by design. And I can actually go ahead and create another model here, and this is just for funsies. We're going to use, let's do lid 1 open. And we're going to select the same texture, so create C, cool, and mask, create X. There we go. So now we can change the color of the crate like that. So this is really useful if you want, like, I don't know, like you're doing, you want the crate to be colored based on the player that it belongs to or something. And let's actually change this to the closed version, because that's cool. So you can, change that around for your player colors or whatnot, and that, because it's a primary color, and it, just like the generic map, this can be changed in-game. And actually, I've got another version here that is a variant where basically the paint channels are swapped, so like your primary color changes that. Just to illustrate what you can do as far as masks go, if you're clever with it. Got lid 2 open, if you want the open version of that. Or let's do 3, like it's slid off and set to the side. But if you're really clever about your UV layouts and whatnot, you can pack a lot of data and a lot of different variants into the same mesh. Let's go with that. Why not? I'm going to save this, and you'll notice that there's not actually any special panels for this, but it is its own type. So like, it is not a generic model. It is explicitly container, and it has its own intrinsic behavior based on that type. But they can't really be set in the editor. So you're just going to basically dictate its appearance in here. So if we save this, and we'll go back, and we can start with an empty state, and we'll play around with this, but ideally what'll end up happening is you'll set the behavior of your containers in your initial state. So if we go to properties, now we can get into the fun stuff. So the fun stuff, of course, being what kind of container is it? Do you pull items out at random, or is it like, if you have 5 items in the container, will it pull each of them randomly but not actually pull them out? So like, you'll have those 5 items, and you can pull continuously and infinitely pull those 5 items at random. You can do a queue, which is like first in, last out, or first in, first out. FIFO, yeah, first in, first out. Infinite queue is a little strange, but the way this works, I think, is basically it's basically a looping queue. So if you have like 5 items, A, B, C, D, and E, you can pull item A, and then you can pull item B, and then pull item C, and D, and E, and then you pull A again, and then B again, and then C. So it's a wrapping infinite queue. Stack is basically LIFO, last in, first out, opposite of queue. That's basically how that works. Rotation is like, do you want the item to just remember the orientation that it gets put in, or do you want the container to dictate the rotation? So like, if you have a card or something here, you can actually dictate whether or not it's flipped or, wrong window. You can dictate whether it comes out flipped or if it comes out in, face up, or if for some reason you want the rotation to be determined by the container. I don't know a circumstance where you'd want the container rotation, but hey. But flipped and default are probably what you're going to use the most. Lazy loading. Lazy loading is a little bit of a kind of thing. So basically, when you load, when the game loads a container by default with this lazy loading checked off, unchecked, it will load all of the contents when the container loads. That's generally preferable for a couple of reasons. One is from a scripting perspective. If you're trying to access the contents of the container, you probably want to be able to access them. So lazy loading kind of can get in the way of that a little bit, I think. The other reason is lazy loading, if it's enabled, will make it so that when you go to explore the container, it will then load the items in there on demand. So like it's the first time it's accessed, will it load the contents. And just as the tooltip here says that I'm basically re-explaining poorly, is it can cause a little bit of a hiccup in frame rate or loading times or network speed while it loads the contents. So you might as well just load them up front and be done with it. It's up to you. And then you have, is there a maximum number of items you can hold? Now, with owner, what's cool about owner is by assigning an owner to the thing, it changes the primary color, which is neat. But also, like, only that owner can access the container at that point. Unfortunately, no player does not reset it to, but that's fine. So only the, like I said, only the owner can actually access the contents. I don't know if player roles has an effect on that, like whether or not game masters or spectators can access things even if they're not the owner, if permissions are set up a certain way. As I understand it, the roles system was kind of a fairly recent addition. So I don't think that the containers have kind of caught up to that paradigm, or even if they will be changed to that paradigm. But it does take teams into account, though. So, like, if I'm on a team, if I'm the blue player and I'm on the same team as the green player, I can access this. So that's a thing. But yeah. Also tags. With tags, you can either have no tags on the container and it takes any item, or you can put tags on the container and only tags that, or only items with that tag will be eligible to be placed in the container. So this is a good way to forcibly, dictate what your container can take. That's pretty much how containers work. So not so much in the way of the editor. It's all in-game and in-state. So, these can be changed during the game. I don't know what permission levels you need to have to be able to edit this in place, so I don't know if your players can muck this up. I imagine not, but I'm not sure. But more importantly, a lot of this can actually be changed via scripting, because a lot of template properties are not changeable via scripting. Only object properties are. So all this stuff can be altered with scripting. So that's why it's here. I'm sure it's one of the reasons why it's here in the game state and not the template editor. But that's pretty much containers for you. Also, here's the Container Explorer, which is not exciting because there's nothing in it. So let me throw a die in there. There we go. Now we have something in here. You can turn on names. And now it's empty. The only thing though, and this is worth mentioning, is if I actually change this to infinite random, I can pull dice out to my heart's content. But if I go to the Explorer and pull it out, it's now empty. So when you pull an infinite container out from the Container Explorer, it will remove it from the infinite state, which is actually a good thing, because how else could you remove something? So, and then empty will actually empty it no matter what. So yeah, that's containers for you. So we'll back out of here. And card holder. Now with card holders, again, this is going to be a custom model. You can put whatever model you want on it. I'm actually just going to use our hex token from before because I haven't bothered modeling a card holder model. So we're just going to recycle this because I'm lazy. And let's just throw on this because why not? Again, we're lazy. We're industrious. We're not lazy. We're industrious. Recycling content. That's important. Okay. So, it behaves a lot like a generic model. You know, you've got your typical model stuff. You got your template settings, and those haven't changed. Of course, the type is now card holder, so that has its own intrinsic properties. You know, snap points and collision all work the same. But over here we have a new panel for card holder. So in this card holder panel, I've just turned on the visibility on this, and this kind of dictates where the area of cards is going to be, and this might actually be a little bit easier to explain once I bring it into the game, so we'll do that. But this XYZ vector, of course, is where the cards are going to hang out, where they're going to hover. So we can do that. Oh, it's actually worth mentioning here that the primary color is not accessible here, and that's actually kind of by design a little bit. The primary color is going to be dictated by the owner of the card holder. So your masks should still work. You just can't set them. So if I actually change this to OM, and we'll change this mask. If you recall, I think this is how this works. Yeah, if you recall, we have this inner track that is dictated by the secondary color, and this outer hexagon is going to be dictated by the primary color. So we'll keep this white. And once we bring this into game and assign it to a user, you'll see hopefully this outer hexagon will change color to say, yeah, this belongs to this player. So do your mask textures accordingly. Anyways, so this vector basically dictates where the cards hang out. And you've got this blue sphere, which represents the center of the card holding area. I'm just going to stick it there. And the width is basically just how far a spread of cards do you want? How do you want them stacked? This also, I think, will actually dictate the maximum or the minimum width that your card needs to be to fit on the card holder. I think. I'm not sure on that one. But the max card height definitely dictates the maximum height of the card that can fit on the card holder. So I'm actually going to change that to like 9.5 or something just to illustrate how this works. And you know, let's actually scale this up a little bit. Cool. And then you can dictate how many cards will actually fit in your hand. I'm not sure if that's actually alterable in game. We'll find out in a second. But like if your game has dictates, yeah, you can only have 4 cards in your hand, or you might want to actually give them an extra so that when they draw they can discard or something. So like, I don't know, Texas Hold'em, you can only have 2 cards, or you know, what have you. Or you might just want to ramp it up all the way to the top and let your players have their own rules enforcement there. Again, not sure if that's changeable in the card editor, but or in the game state itself. So we'll take a look at that in a second. I'm going to save this card holder, come back, go to preview, empty up an empty table, load up an empty table, that's what I meant to say. And there's our card holder. Okay. Keen. Let's see. Okay, so it does not look like the maximum number of cards can be editable in the game state, which is kind of unfortunate. But you'll see that that hexagon is now blue because it's owned by the blue player, and likewise green. See? So you can color the model based on the owner using the primary color. I think no player is going to be white, which is slightly confusing because there is a dedicated white as well, but you know, it's fine. You got a couple other options here, like, you know, if enabled, only the owning player can take cards from this holder, otherwise all players can take cards. It's great if you want to do, like, a public zone, where, you know, yeah, they're blue players' cards, but, like, it's a public pool of some sort, or you can set no player, and it doesn't matter if owning player is turned on or off. So that's a thing. And then hidden cards. Hidden cards... the default behavior basically says, I think, rely on the state of the cards. It's probably where you want that to be. And I'll show you what I mean. If you remember back in the... in fact, let me actually change this. I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to take the properties of this and say this is actually the green players now. But I will also... turn off take only so that I, as the current blue player, see my box is blue, can take cards. So, if you recall, we have this thing where we set up an alternate view, like a hidden state for this card, so the question mark. That's funny. Oh, that's funny. Found a bug. Okay. Okay. Anyways, so we have this this card with its own hidden state, and so I believe default basically says use the hidden type that is on the card itself. So in this case, it'll be separate file, or it'll use the blur if the card is set to blur or whatnot. So that should be what happens. Yep, and you can see that's what it does. So while it's in that hand, it says, yeah, we'll use the card's default. In contrast, we do properties, and let's go with card back. So despite the fact that the card is set up to use the question mark special texture, we can actually have it show the back no matter what. Again, I wouldn't recommend that for the same reasons that I kind of outlined in the card video in part 3? 4? So, you know, it kind of throws mixed signals. So again, I would just leave it at default. Or you can say don't hide them. Just don't hide them. It doesn't matter. We're okay with that. So use card front if you want to have this not hidden. This basically says don't hide. So if your card holder is, say, public but not modifiable by other players, you would want to do owner only and card front. So it is basically a display for other players, but only the owner can interact with it. And that's how that would look. In contrast, if you know, you want it in a hidden state, I would go with the default so that your cards dictate what their own hidden state looks like. And you know, if it's public and it doesn't matter, it's like a public pool where anyone can take stuff in and out, I would probably do, you could either have no player, which means no one owns it, which means it will never be in its hidden state. Or if it is owned by a player but it's still kind of semi-public, I would do that, where your hidden card is card front, basically means don't hide, but it's still owned by this player, and anyone can take from it. There's kind of a little bit of redundancy in that setup, but it might matter in terms of scripting or whatnot, where you're like, yeah, it's important for me to have this card holder have an owner, even though the cards on it are public knowledge. So I appreciate that there's this much control over it, even if it does seem slightly counterintuitive at first blush. So that's pretty much the gist of how card holders work. So we're gonna just exit out of here, and next up, we should probably cover the cardboard figures, the multi-state objects, the book, and the table. I'll probably blitz through most of those because they're fairly intuitive, except maybe the multi-state object. That one takes a little bit of explanation. So that'll probably be my last part on object types. After that, we'll probably get into a couple more specialized things when it comes to mod development. And we'll get into scripting probably soon after that. So that'll be fun. Anyways, drop a comment if you're confused by anything, or as always, feel free to hit me up on the Discord, or cry for help out there, and don't worry, we'll get to you. We'll help you out. Best of luck.